Smith Show starts right now.
To hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show, here with you over the airways of ESPN Radio and ESPN News, plus Sirius XM Channel 80. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Credit Karma. Get your truly free credit scores and free credit monitoring from Credit Karma today. That's Credit Karma, K-A-R-M-A. Get knowing. Plus, need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. On the line with us right now, as promised, is Major League Baseball insider extraordinaire. The one and only Jeff Passan is on the line with us right now. What's going on, Jeff? Good afternoon. Good morning. How are you?
Stephen A., I'm well, my friend. How about yourself?
Your initial and immediate reaction upon learning that Mike Trout was about to ink a 12-year, $430 million deal where the final 2 years of his contract were being ripped up so he could have this deal in front of him. Your thoughts?
Good Lord, that's a lot of money. And it's, it's understandable too. Like, I believe when Manny Machado signed or when Bryce Harper signed, I don't remember which one it was, but you said, I believe on this program, might have been on First Take, I'm not positive, but if that guy is worth that much, how much is Mike Trout worth? And we now have the answer to that. He's worth more than any athlete in the history of sports, more than Canelo Alvarez getting $365 million, more than Bryce Harper getting $330 million. It is a monumental extension, and you know what? The guy deserves it because he's the best player in baseball.
Well, for those that may not comprehend it, quantify for us in any way that you possibly can why he's worth $100 million more than Bryce Harper, $105 million more than Giancarlo Stanton, $130 million more than Manny Machado. The list goes on and on. Why?
It's just a matter of production. And look, we can nerd out a little here and talk about wins above replacement, and it's a new stat, and it's a stat that tries to quantify exactly how productive a particular player has been. Mm-hmm. And through his age 26 season, Mike Trout has piled up more wins above replacement than any player in the history of baseball, more than Babe Ruth, more than Ty Cobb, more than Mickey Mantle, more than anybody. And because of that, and because they wanted to keep him in their uniform for the remainder of his career, the Los Angeles Angels understood that in order to get Mike Trout not to hit free agency after the 2020 season, they needed to step up financially. And that's exactly what they did. They tacked on 10 years to his current deal. It's going to be about $365 million or so in new money. And you know what? For a guy who produces like Mike Trout does, Stephen A., 365 for 10 years is not bad. And it's a crazy thing to say. I understand how ridiculous that sounds, but when you look at where baseball salaries are at right now, Bryce Harper getting 330 for 13, Manny Machado getting 300 for 10, Trout getting 365 for 10, it's actually a pretty team-friendly deal.
If Bryce Harper hadn't opened his mouth and been so open about pursuing Mike Trout the second he became a free agent in 2 years, are we at this point right now, or is this something that probably happens a year from now, or whatever the case may be?
You know, I think that probably showed the Los Angeles Angels, hey, the quicker we can get this done, the better. But they went into this offseason even before Bryce Harper signed with the Philadelphia Phillies, knowing that locking him up right now was going to be the best thing for their team long term. And look, they've dabbled in these long-term contracts in the past, and they have not turned out well. The $365 million that they're adding to Trout's deal, that's exactly what they spent on Albert Pujols and Josh Hamilton. And Pujols is, he looks like a shell of his former self. Mm-hmm. And Hamilton's deal is one of the worst in baseball history. for a club. So Artie Moreno has been here in the past, and it has not turned out well. You can talk about C.J. Wilson. You can talk about Gary Matthews Jr. Like, the Angels' history with long-term deals is not fruitful, but they see Mike Trout as a completely different breed, and I can understand why. If you're going to build around anyone in baseball today, he is the guy you build around. And when you have Shohei Ohtani and you have Joe Adell, who's a 19-year-old, he's going to start in Double-A this year. He'll be with the Angels at this point next year. That is one whale of an outfield to put out there on a daily basis. Question is, can they get pitching? And if the Angels get any pitching anytime soon, whether it's internally or via free agency, they're going to be a contender in the American League West. And look, that's important because Mike Trout has played in 3 playoff games in his 8-year career and has lost all 3 of them.
When he got swept by the Kansas City Royals in 2014. I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm talking to Jeff Paston, MLB Insider, right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. For those that may not know, may not comprehend just the financials of Major League Baseball, of a Major League Baseball team, how do you pay a Mike Trout $430 million? I'm thinking it's 162 games. 81 of them are at home. They've got a $3 billion television deal, if I remember correctly. But could you break down for us why these numbers are not going to blow the Angels away and inhibit their ability to build a team around this superstar?
Major League Baseball, Stephen A., is a $10 billion+ a year industry in terms of revenue. There is no lack of cash in the game right now.
You're talking about the league. You're talking about the league, but not an individual team, right?
Correct.
Okay,
correct.
go ahead.
But the $3 billion figure you had for 20 years of television is correct. And as opposed to the NFL, which has all of the teams under its auspices and negotiates contracts that way, each individual major league team negotiates its deals, and the Angels have one of the biggest television contracts out there. So financially, they're not going to have any problems doing this. They have that money. It's locked in. It's in the bank, and they're going to be just fine paying him that. And look, they're going to be able to go out and make some other moves too. They don't have a lot of long-term deals on the books at this point, so they can build around Mike Trout and give him the type of team that he deserves.
Jeff Passon right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. You don't hear too many negatives about Mike Trout because really there's none to find. But guess what, Jeff? I may have found one. Are you ready for this?
Let's hear it.
His voice. He doesn't talk too much. He doesn't talk too much, Jeff. He doesn't talk too much. Now, we heard Bryce Harper go out there and talk. Not only did he sign, but he talked about recruiting. Man, Bryce Harper tried to recruit Le'Veon Bell to the Philadelphia Eagles of the National Football League. That's not what Mike Trout does. So his voice could potentially be a problem because he's going to play. He's going to perform. But what about Mike Trout, the recruiter? Did I make a case there?
No, not really.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Mike Trout also would have recruited Le'Veon Bell to the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's right.
Mike Trout is a huge Eagles fan.
Yes, he is.
He's a bigger Eagles fan than Bryce Harper ever will be.
That is true.
I think that Mike Trout does not need to say a word to recruit. I think the depth of his talent and the exquisite way that he plays baseball is all anybody in the game needs to know. And he could go out there and stump publicly, but it would just be eyewash, man. And I'm not saying that what Bryce Harper's doing is eyewash. That's Harper's personality. That's his style. You know, going out there and publicly stumping is not Mike Trout's style. He has always been a very laid-back guy. You know, I mean, even last year, I think it was, Rob Manfred, the commissioner of baseball, said maybe Mike Trout would be a bigger star if he put himself out there more. And you know what? That's true. Like, there was nothing false about what Rob Manfred said there, but that's just not who Mike Trout is. He's a guy who doesn't seek the spotlight. And it's hard, for me at least, to fault him for that, because anybody who is genuine to him or herself, I have respect for. And Mike Trout has always been a very genuine person.
I totally agree with you, and I feel the exact same way about him. But what I would say, playing the role of devil's advocate, is that these guys don't just play baseball. They're trying to uplift the sport. Somebody like an Alex Rodriguez just spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. When Jessica Mendoza spoke about that as well. You're talking about Major League Baseball, and I'll go a little bit philosophical with you here, Jeff. It's one of those situations where you look at the NFL and how they're in the mind's eye in terms of how they go about the business of ingratiating themselves with a younger audience. The NBA clearly has done that. In the sport of Major League Baseball, where the average fan is like from 47 to 54 for crying out loud, you do have people who are concerned about the future of baseball because of that reality. Do you not believe there should be some onus placed on today's player to help promote the sport in such a way that could help them ingratiate themselves with a younger up-and-coming audience?
That is the most salient argument possible for Mike Trout to become more involved publicly. Not what his present is, but what the sport's future is. And I think that is a reasonable thing for baseball to ask, to want, to desire. And I think it's equally reasonable for Mike Trout to say, no, that's not my style. But yes, in an ideal world, absolutely. You would like the guy who's better than anyone in the game right now and who has a chance when it's all said and done to be better than anyone in the history of the game to be out there promoting the sport. And you know what? He promotes the sport through the way he plays it. But you would love it if you're baseball for him to promote the sport through the way he plays it and through the words that come out of his mouth.
No question about it. We're talking to Jeff Passan right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Having said all of that, 8 times in the last 9 seasons, the Angels have made the postseason. They've missed the postseason. They've only made it once, and they haven't won one single playoff game in Mike Trout's career. Now, obviously, baseball is pretty much an individual sport. You could be as great as you want to be, for example, as a fielder, a hitter. But if you don't get any pitching, what does it matter? We understand that. The flip side to it, though, is couldn't that be justification in some people's eyes for looking at a contract like this and saying he may deserve it, every penny, but what purpose will it serve the Angels who've missed the postseason each of the last 4 years and has finished below 500 each of the last 3 years? What purpose does it serve? How do you answer that question, Jeff?
I think the counter argument to that is, what do the Angels look like without Mike Trout? They're a much, much worse team. And if the organization is making these goo-gobs of money that it is, that money needs to be spent somewhere. And if I am them, I would rather spend it on a guy who I drafted 25th overall, who is on my major league roster as a 19-year-old, who has done nothing but perform on the field and be a good citizen in the community and good representative of the organization, rather than going out and spending it elsewhere. The money needs to go somewhere, Stephen A. And just because Mike Trout has not been a star in October doesn't mean that you have to hold him personally responsible for it. You know, one man can only do so much, and he's done about as much as humanly possible by himself to uplift that organization and make it better. Now, because his teammates, because the other 24 guys around him have not performed at that level, can you hold him responsible? I personally have trouble doing that myself.
Jeff Passan, having said all of that, we look at other individuals. A Mike Socha, for example, entering his 19th season as the manager for this ball club. Does a contract like Mike Trout apply more pressure to somebody like him to turn things around, or else Moreno's going to move in a different direction?
Well, Socha is gone, actually. Brad Ausmus is the manager.
Oh, my God. I'm sorry. I totally forgot about that. I can't believe I forgot about that, because Mike Socha was one of my favorite guys. No problem.
There's a lot of shuffling going on during the offseason.
No problem. I was looking at the 88-82 record from last year. My bad. I'm totally fault on that one. Having said all of that, though, still in all, does it apply more pressure to Pujols? Does it apply more pressure to anybody else to step up and produce, considering the situation that we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think it puts pressure on Matt Harvey, who's in on a one-year deal to fortify that rotation. It puts pressure on Trevor Cahill. You know, it puts pressure on Shohei Ohtani. He's trying to do something this year that nobody has ever done before, which is play while rehabbing from Tommy John surgery. He's not going to be pitching, but he's going to be the everyday designated hitter. He may potentially ultimately play a little bit of right field as well. And next year in 2020, he's going to be the beast unleashed. And if Shohei Ohtani can fulfill his potential on both sides of the baseball and you have Mike Trout there, we're talking two of the 5 best players in baseball on the same team. It is incumbent on Billy Epler, the general manager there, and Artie Moreno to step up and fill around it. And they've got a really good farm system, Stephen A. So at this point, the Angels are in as good of a position as they've been since that 2014 season where they were swept after winning 100 games. And frankly, since probably when they won the World Series nearly 2 decades ago now.
Jeff Passan right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. What about the pressure it puts on teams from opposing, on other teams? Bryce Harper, his $330 million. I just went into Giancarlo Stanton, Aaron Judge. These guys are going to be looking for money down the road. Giancarlo Stanton already getting his money. What about the pressure it applies to them, knowing that a guy like Mike Trout signs for $430 million and nobody is blinking at it? Nobody's concerned about it whatsoever because we're looking at it and we're saying, excuse me, we know what he can do. What are y'all going to do? What about that?
Yeah. Harper's got a ton of pressure because he wants to perform in Philadelphia and show that he was worth the $330 million. Giancarlo Stanton's got a ton of pressure because it's his second season with the Yankees now, and they have World Series aspirations, and he's still in the middle of a $325 million contract. To me, though, the guys to keep an eye on are Aaron Judge, Mookie Betts, and Francisco Lindor. That is the next generation of guys who are looking at $300+ million contracts. And, when it's all said and done, Stephen A., those are the guys who are going to be in line to potentially break Mike Trout's record, which is crazy to think about, but a reality too, because there is a lot of money in baseball right now, and teams understand that as much as the market has cratered for those mid-tier players and those low to mid-tier guys, and they're just not getting paid what they used to, superstars still get cash.
Yeah, you say that, but look at what Mike Trout brings to the table in terms of his complete game. Is being a home run hitter going to be enough to get you that kind of money? Because when I think about Giancarlo Stanton, nobody's talking about his fielding. Nobody's talking about anything. Yeah. They expect him to smack home runs out of the park. Is that going to be enough to justify you getting the kind of money that he's getting right now? Is that going to be something that's enough for Aaron Judge, even though I know he could field too?
Yep, Aaron Judge can field, and Aaron Judge takes walks. And look, the most alluring thing about Mike Trout's game is that 460 on-base percentage. When you're talking about a guy who's on base almost half the time, there's such value in that because you don't score runs unless you're on base. And Mookie Betts is another guy who beat Mike Trout out for the most valuable player in the American League last year. Francisco Lindor plays shortstop and plays at an extremely high level. Chris Bryant's another guy in that conversation, an elite third baseman. So we're talking about guys who bring not just value with their bats and their production, but with their positional play and those secondary skills like taking walks. That really impact the baseball game.
By the way, let me get back to that manager situation now that because I had a brain freeze and forgot that Social left is gone and you got Ausmus there. 4 years in Detroit, 2 winning seasons. I mean, I'm looking at his record right now, 314, 332. Why is he the manager of the Angels? How did you feel about that?
They saw Brad Ausmus as a young guy who can communicate with players and can be the good face of an organization. He's a very handsome guy. I have no problem saying that. Everybody in baseball kind of has a man crush on Brad Ausmus.
Right.
But, it doesn't matter how good looking you are unless you win baseball games. And they felt like he was the guy to lead them to that place. But they're in a division with a team like the Houston Astros that don't just have a loaded major league roster right now, but have a very good farm system, have won a World Series within the last 2 years, been to the playoffs, I think 3 out of 4 seasons. Like the Astros are good, and they're going to be good for a while. The Oakland A's won 97 games last year. They're returning a lot of that roster. Matt Chapman is maybe the most underrated player in baseball right now. Jesus Luzardo, a left-handed pitching prospect, looks like an ace at this point. They're going to be good. The Texas Rangers, good farm system. They're on the come up as well. The Seattle Mariners are retooling at this point. It's not like the West is going to be an easy ride for the Los Angeles Angels. But if you're going to take that ride, Stephen A., I'd rather do it with Mike Trout than without.
I agree with you, but I expect them to be in last place again or pretty close to it. I certainly don't see them challenging Houston. Houston won 153 games, 103 games last year.
Yeah, you know what? Here's the thing about the American League, though. You got the Yankees, you got the Red Sox, you got the Astros. They are clearly the creme de la creme in the league. There are two other playoff spots, though, and whether it's the Tampa Bay Rays, the Oakland A's, or even potentially, the Minnesota Twins, maybe even the Los Angeles Angels. I think Cleveland's going to win the Central this year, but there aren't a whole lot of teams competing for those wild card spots. And while I agree with you that the Angels don't look like a playoff team right now, all it takes is a couple of moves at the trade deadline, and the American League field is wide enough open that they could sneak in one of those wild card spots.
Before I let you get on out of here for the day, I was talking about the Yankees and how some guys got to step up. I got to ask a question about a team like the Dodgers, for example. The Angels signed Mike Trout, but the Los Angeles Dodgers don't need to do anything like that. They just got off another World Series loss. However, they still haven't won a World Series since 1988. You still got Kershaw on the crew, but what are we to expect from them? What kind of moves they're going to make? They didn't sign Manny Machado. They didn't re-sign him or anything like that. I'm wondering, what are your expectations for them this upcoming season?
Yeah, they signed A.J. Pollock to a $55 million, and that $55 million deal was the most money that Andrew Friedman has spent on a free agent who is not his own in his time running a club. He re-signed Justin Turner, re-signed Clayton Kershaw, re-signed Kenley Jansen. But the Dodgers pipeline is pretty stacked. They're getting Corey Seager back this year. That's like adding a superstar potentially, a guy who in his first couple of seasons was really, really good. That being said, it's a tough National League, man. And while I think they are the best team in the West, you look at the East. The Nationals are good. The Mets are good. The Phillies are good.
Stop right there. Stop right there, Jeff. Stop right there, Jeff. Why should I believe the Mets are good? First of all, you got DeGrom. He ain't interested in negotiating once the season begins. Syndergaard can't stay healthy. Don't get me started on Matz or Wheeler, all right? Cespedes, we don't know when he's going to be back. We don't know what they're going to get from anybody right now. They brought Familia back. They got that kid, the closer, from Seattle. But I don't understand why everybody is saying the Mets are going to be good. Why are you saying that, sir?
I'm saying that because I believe in talent and I believe in depth. And they've got a lot of both of those things. A guy like Jeff McNeil, sneaky guy who I think is going to hit 300 this year. Robinson Cano really fortifies that lineup. I'm going to come back on in the middle of the season, Stephen A. Mm-hmm. We're going to have a conversation about the Mets, and you're going to have a big old plate of crow in front of you.
Why?
And I want you to eat it. I want you to gobble it down.
Why am I going to have crow on me? What do you think? You trying to tell me? What's your definition of me eating crow? Break that down for me, Jeff. What's it? That they're going to win 80 games? What is it? What is it? What does that mean I'm going to be eating crow? They're going to win 80, 85 games? Why should I expect anything from the New York Mets? Other than Don LaGreca complaining about them. Other than that, what do I have to worry about with the Mets?
I think the Mets are going to be in the playoff hunt this year. Does that count as crow?
Well, it depends. It would count as crow, Jeff.
Is your standard of crow higher, Stephen?
Hold on. Wait a minute, Jeff. Wait a minute, Jeff.
Here's the thing, Stephen A. I'm a good cook. I will cook you a good plate of crow right now.
No. It's not going to work. I'm not going to need it. I'm not going to need it.
Well, I will make sure to cook it to enough medium unless you're the guy who wants it well done. How do you like your crow, Stephen A?
Unless it tastes like lasagna, I'm not interested. But I will tell you this. Jeff Bassett. I will tell you this. If they're competing for a playoff spot at the beginning of September, that qualifies. It don't qualify if you're competing for a playoff spot in June. Who gives a damn about that?
Hey, that is totally reasonable, and you know what? I am on board with that. You got it, Stephen A.
And by the way,
book me for September 1st.
Okay.
Book me for September 1st, and I will come on, and one of us will have a delicious meal that day, and I'm pretty sure it ain't gonna be me.
Let me tell you something right now. You can say that if you want to. You speaking with confidence about the New York Mets. That would make you a foreigner in this land, in New York City, because ain't nobody feeling that way about it. They got this kid. What is it? Brody Van Wagenen, whatever the hell his name is. They say he looks good just like Brad Ausmus. You said Brad Ausmus looked good. That don't mean he's going to win you games. They ain't going to win you games with the New York Mets. That's not going to get it done.
This is turning into a love fest, Stephen A.
I'm just telling you.
I like it.
All right. You can go ahead and get your crow ready. I'm not going to have to worry about it. I really, really am not. I really am not. And sorry about that brain fog, brain freeze with social.
On September 1st,
Yes.
September 1st, I'm going to come to New York.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be in the studio with you. I'm going to rent an Airbnb that has a kitchen in New York City, and I'm going to cook you a plate.
All right, you do that. You do that. The Mets. Please, they ain't going to do anything, Jeff Passan. You ain't got to worry about that. You ain't got to worry about that. How about staying healthy? I like DeGrom and Syndergaard. I don't like too much else on the New York Mets, but that's just me. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much, man. All the best to you.
All right, my friend. Take care.
Take it easy. The one and only Jeff Passan, Major League Baseball insider extraordinaire, right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY, ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Damn, I'm glad he reminded me. I forgot all about social leaving. I forgot all about it. I mean, he's been here for 19 years. I forgot. Brad Ausmus. I remember when Social first walked away, and I was like, Ausmus, why him? Why him? What did he do in Detroit? What did he do? One good year, but that was it. I didn't understand it. That's probably why I forgot he was there. 888-SAY, ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. We'll get back to your calls in more in a minute. By the way, do you have frequent heartburn? Like the kind where you have antacids stashed everywhere in case it pops up. You know what I mean. You keep some in your bag or your desk or your car or your nightstand. You have those chalky tablets ready for whenever and wherever heartburn strikes. Well, listen up. There's an easier way to deal with your heartburn. That's Prilosec OTC. Just one pill a day will last a full 24 hours with zero heartburn. So kick your antacid habit. It's possible with Prilosec OTC. Use as directed for 14 days to treat frequent heartburn, not for immediate relief. More of the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. I'll get into Ghetto Men on Odell Beckham Jr. and Eli Manning and then some in a minute. Don't touch that dial. It's Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Craving even more.